You're smart, you're motivated, you want to do something big. You're on the verge of being a young boss, and we're going to help you get there. I'm your host, Isabel Guarino, and welcome to the Young Boss Podcast, where youth is your power. Did you know that you can make six figures as a paralegal? I had no idea. In this week's episode, we talk with Lindsey Corbin, owner of Delegate Legal, about being burned by friends, why referral fee partnerships are a load of shit, and how building her business allowed her to confidently leave her marriage and support herself and her kids. Here's our conversation. Welcome, Lindsey. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and about your business.
My business is a company called Delegate.legal, or Delegate as we affectionately call it. And it is a virtual paralegal firm.
Okay.
So essentially what we do is when lawyers need additional help, mostly in the IP space, so trademarks, patents, copyrights, they will call us and say, hey, I need help with a filing or document drafting or legal billing we do as well. And so we're able to step in and help on just a contract basis for as little or as much as they need.
Wow. What got you started in this? Because I would assume paralegals are typically in-house for lawyers. So how did you figure out this loophole?
Yes. So paralegals historically are typically with, lawyer, paralegal, law firm setting, or corporation, however they want to do that. But when COVID happened, everything changed. And the idea of being a freelance paralegal has been around for a long time. And I had been approached maybe 10 years prior, but didn't quite give it much thought.
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, I was working in private equity and I was working from home, and I was approached by a colleague who said, hey, we know a lawyer who needs help. Do you have any bandwidth? And I said, sure. Like, why not? I'm working from home. I can do a little bit here and there. And I quickly discovered that there was a really big market for all of these virtual attorneys who had started their own firm.
Yeah.
So they were one attorney, one or zero offices, doing it all themselves, and they just needed a little bit of extra help. And I became that resource for most of them.
And incredible name, right? How did you even get that or find that? Amazing.
Funny enough, maybe 5 years ago, called a GTLD, so global domain names, which are .coms, .orgs, all these things that people recognize. So the governing body started to introduce additional options for top-level domains. And so .legal happened to be one of them.
Wow.
And I was sitting around at my parents' house with my family trying to name a business. And as most people can appreciate, naming a business is tricky.
Yep.
You have to find something that's available, that's catchy, that's descriptive, or in the trademark sense, we prefer it to be suggestive, which we can get more into, but not so descriptive that everybody's going to choose it.
Yeah.
And we were sitting around and it was, our job, we want people to delegate their work to us.
Yeah.
So delegate.legal, and then I could buy the domain name that matched it.
Amazing. Really great name. Let's talk about trademarking, because I know we in our assisted living business have tried to trademark a lot of things. Sometimes they're like, it's too neutral, it's too broad, and some things they've let us go for. And so it is such a tricky game in that regard. But young bosses or business owners, they may be thinking of, just like you're saying, what do I name my business? What do I call this? And how much does that play into choosing the right business name?
Choosing a business name is difficult, honestly, because you want it to be catchy.
Yeah.
You want it to walk a fine line of telling your audience what you do without making it so descriptive or generic that you can't possibly get a trademark on it. So one of the things, so you can't really name your business Apple if you're going to sell apples, for example, right? Part of why the Apple trademark works is it is not descriptive of what they do.
Yeah.
It's very distinctive, which is the hallmark of having a trademark. You want it to be distinctive. So when you're thinking about naming your business, you want to think of something that will catch on with your intended consumer base. So what is it that you want them to see? What do you want to convey?
Yeah.
But also, what's a little bit more distinctive that can set you apart?
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be having a distinctive logo.
Oh.
Sometimes it can be having a distinctive name.
Yeah.
In my case, Delegate.legal is suggestive. So that's also a good component of having a trademark. It's suggestive of what we're doing, but it doesn't describe what we're doing. We're not delegating the work.
Right.
Our clients are delegating to us. So it's a interesting balance and naming a business can frequently, I like to think of it as throwing darts at a dartboard.
Yeah.
You can come up with 10 different names and you just have to see what sticks.
Yeah. I always joke with people. I'm like, make sure that it's something 9 out of 10 people can read, write, and understand. Make sure the acronym is not something silly.
Good point.
Right? Because a lot of times you name it and then you don't even think about the acronym because that's not what you're planning on using, but you, at least internally, you're going to use it, you know, and it's like, oh, can't use that one.
Yep.
Like, so it's so silly, but all those little things, they go a long way. And even having something really spelled out now becomes this super long URL. So it's so important. Naming a business is huge.
Yes.
I know you used to work at a Fortune 500 company.
I did.
And then you made the shift to doing your own thing. What was kind of the precipice behind that big shift?
It was figuring out what was going to be next in my career and wanting to figure out how to break through what I had seen as a glass ceiling for a trademark, paralegal, and for salary. There is, being a paralegal is somewhat fined within certain salary parameters, regardless of practice area. And attorneys don't tend to like to budge. And when you're in certain practice areas, you have a little bit more specialty than others. And I felt like that needed to be a little bit more rewarded, right? I wanted a bigger salary at what I was doing. And that wasn't happening. And so I knew that eventually financial independence was something that I wanted to work toward, and making more money was a part of that. Unfortunately, if you spend money, you also have to make money. So starting the business allowed me to get my financial independence. It allowed me to start to make money for myself. It ultimately allowed me to get a divorce and be financially independent with my kids and do some things that may or may not have been possible had I stayed in a more traditional setting.
Wow. I know when I went through my divorce, that was something that I had thought about a lot. How am I going to financially make this work? Now I'm losing a partner in this. And even though I was making great money at the time, it is scary. Now you're out on your own and doing that. And I know potentially some of our listeners are thinking like, hey, that is actually why I want to go start my own thing, to make more money, because I need to be good on my own and I don't want to rely on anyone else. So I think that that is huge.
That's exactly right. I would caution, if that's the path that a listener wants to take, if they want to start their own business to set themselves up for success, I would just make sure that they talk to an attorney, because there can be financial impact when you start a business and you're married. So I would just caution them to talk to an attorney first. Make sure they've got their ducks in a row as their bank account continues to grow.
I agree. I think that's huge. So had you ever started a business before?
Yes, actually.
Okay, tell us.
But that was purely by happenstance.
Okay.
So several years prior, I had created a brand protection program, which is really just a fancy way of saying I started protecting a company's trademarks and copyrights online.
Okay.
That was it. I was watching, I was monitoring for them. I would send people letters that would say, hey, you can't use our trademark. Hey, you can't own this domain.
Was it someone big? Are we allowed to say who?
Actually, it was the company that owned Botox. I had the good fortune to protect Botox, Juvederm, Latisse, Natrel, and Lapband. It was Allergan then, now it's AbbVie. They don't own all those trademarks. I don't actually know what all of the brands are anymore. Botox is definitely the most famous. So I started this program with them and I started protecting all their brands online. And eventually I was living in Southern California at the time. And some other bigger brands also caught wind of what I was doing. And when there was a natural break in my employment with Allergan and doing the next thing, whatever that was going to be, I created a company. I called myself Z5 Consulting.
Okay.
Not a great brand. Wouldn't recommend it. But Z was for Zeta. I was Zeta Tau Alpha in college.
Okay.
And so I did Z5. And the 5 was related to 5 categories of how to determine if a website was infringing on your brand. So I could look at a website and I could put it into one of 5 brands. And from that bucket, I would decide what response I was going to take. So that's what started it. And so I had Z5 Consulting for several years, actually. I did it a little bit full time. Then I actually had a miscarriage. This was back in 2014. And at that point, I was like, I need to go back and get a real job. I don't want to look at my 4 walls anymore. I was working from home before working from home was really a thing. So I went and got a job. I went back into pharma for a company out in Chandler, kept it going for quite a while. And it was just constant side hustle income that was nice in our house. We used it for a lot of things. And so then I eventually closed that one and then started Delegate and made that my full-time gig.
Okay. That's pretty cool. So in multiple businesses, did you shut it down for did you purposefully shut it down?
I did.
Okay. Like you chose to.
I chose to because I didn't really like the name. I didn't really think that was going to be the brand that was going to be the next big thing for me.
Yeah.
And when I created Delegate.legal, it was just a natural attrition to shut down one and really put my energy into the other.
Something else. If someone wants to start their own business, because now you've done this a couple of times, so I'm sure you've learned a lot of mistakes along the way. What are like 3 top tips that you're like, you really need to do these first to just get the ball rolling?
Identify your weaknesses. And I realized that people don't want to admit their weakness. Yeah. But my biggest weakness is QuickBooks and the financials, right? So take it from me. Don't be me. Yeah. So the first time around, I did my own books and it was fine. It was never, I don't think any year that I had Z5, I did more than 6 figures.
Okay.
So I'll just be really transparent. It was not a huge money-making business, but it worked and it was fine. And I did all the books for it. Then this time around, when I created Delegate, I quickly just had that sense that it was going to be bigger.
Yeah.
And the second thing I did after I filed my LLC was get a bookkeeper.
Yep.
I've since been through 2. And so the first one wasn't a great fit, just didn't work for a number of reasons. Now I've got a bookkeeper that actually works directly with my CPA. So tax time is expensive, but much easier.
Yeah.
So trade-offs on that one. And the second thing I did is when I got comfortable enough with monthly recurring revenue to hire a CFO.
Yeah.
I hired a CFO on a consulting basis.
Okay.
So once a week I would meet with a CFO and she taught me my margins.
Yeah.
She taught me how to understand just my pricing in general, if we could roll out some subscriptions, how she worked with I have a number 2 in my business. And so she worked with her to help us understand how the numbers made sense and what our returns were and if we needed to increase our prices or what it was all going to work out as. So that was my biggest weakness. So I would say identify your weaknesses pretty early on and get people around you that can compensate for that.
I love that. When you know yourself and your strengths and weaknesses, it really, I've talked about this on past episodes, it really helps you build out what's that first job I need to hire? What do I not like? And what am I bad at?
Right.
That is your key first hire because the reality is you're going to keep procrastinating on that thing anyways.
Yes.
Because you don't like it.
Correct.
And you don't want to do it. And when you do it, you're like, I hate this. I'm bad at it.
Correct.
So that has to be the first hire. So I kudos to you for knowing yourself and just being like, nope, this isn't for me and hiring that out because I do think that also something you said, I know a couple companies that do like simple CFO where it's like you can hire out for just that. So you don't have to bring on this huge increase in your employees and okay, we've got to hire this CFO. It's going to cost us all this money. Not necessarily. Right. It's almost like a VA for these positions that are high level, but they can keep you accountable, keep you in check and really get you what you need at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So I love that.
Exactly. And I feel like people don't realize that. They hear CFO and they assume it's high dollar, big ticket item. And that's not it at all. It can be an hour a week and it's worth that
in gold.
Big time. It'll pay itself back.
Okay. Tell me about some failures that you've had in business, because I know that when our listeners are thinking about starting their business, they're always afraid of failing to some extent. But the reality is, as business owners, we're going to fail over and over and over again. So when I say that, is there anything that pops in your mind that you're like, oh, this
Hiring is so tricky.
Yeah.
And before I really got into this business, I had no visibility into hiring for any of the companies that I worked for.
Yeah.
Right. I got my job, but I wasn't HR's best friend. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And so making sure it's easy to sit in your chair as a business owner and have this idea of your perfect number 2 or number 3.
Yeah.
I'm really fortunate that my number 2 actually called me. She and I'd worked together previously, and she's really helped me just run the business and take off with it.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's been, you have an idea of what you want and you think you know it, but you have to think about that actual human being. Does that person exist? Can they be on the East Coast, but manage to coordinate on West Coast hours? Do they understand trademarks? Can they speak the lingo? Are they tech savvy?
Yeah.
Are they trustworthy? I mean, these are all lessons that we've learned And you can put anything you want on a resume.
Yes.
That does not make it true.
Hey there, it's Isabel. It's time for you to join the community of ambitious young professionals who are taking their careers to the next level. Hit the subscribe button and become a part of the Young Boss movement today. Now, back to the show.
Yep, 100%. That is so, I think, challenging these days as people are really shopping the job market differently than they used to in the past. And they'll throw their resume, they'll edit it and make it look like they fit that job and edit it over here and fit this job and throw it out to 15 different, completely different jobs. And it's like, okay, who are you really? What is your actual background and experience? Because many jobs you're really not looking for someone that you're going to do a ton of on-the-job training for.
Right.
You really want someone who is ready to go. You're okay training them to your culture, to your company values, but not necessarily to the role. It's like, you should kind of know this. I need you to come in the door with some knowledge.
Correct. And we've been burned on that many times.
Oof.
I mean, you bring them on as a project manager or a virtual assistant, and then you find out that they can't actually figure out how to use Microsoft Word. Or
I've had one of those.
They say they're a project manager, but they can't use Trello, which is a big project management system.
Yeah.
We had somebody who couldn't figure out how to use Google Mail.
Oh God.
I mean, it's things.
Idiotic. Okay.
Yes.
Google Mail is like, come on, people. I've had that before where actually I had someone who they wanted to work for us. They sent me their resume and someone else was doing the hiring within the company and they had proficient in Microsoft Word. And I was like, they know Excel, they know PowerPoint. So I changed their resume, Excel, PowerPoint, sent it to the guy who was hiring. They did not know those things. There was a reason they wrote only Microsoft Word. And I'm thinking, this is 101, baby. Like, of course you know this.
Yeah.
No, there's like people who don't know this.
I've learned, especially in the last, I don't know, probably 5 years, how much people don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Shocking.
And how things that I grew up, I mean, I had computer class in grade school.
Right.
I had to put together a PowerPoint presentation to graduate. I've since learned, by the way, that if you call it a PowerPoint presentation and not a slide deck.
Deck.
It's a deck. Okay, fine. It's still a PowerPoint.
It's a PowerPoint. We're showing our age.
Yes. So, but things like that, how is that not?
I know. Common sense, but it's not.
It's not.
It's pretty wild.
Excel, I give people a pass on though, because I am not an Excel guru. So I would never say I'm proficient in Excel. I can do just enough to get myself in trouble.
Yeah, Excel's pretty amazing though. There are like a million things you can do with it. So, but you know, also it's like, come on, we can all, these days it's like Google, YouTube, you can learn a lot of things like to the point of being like, no, I don't know how. And like, I'm not even going to go search to learn how to do it. It's like, hey, that's not a fit for the company because come on, I need you to at least teach yourself and don't come to me. That's embarrassing if you're going to tell me you don't know how to do that. Is there anything that you wish someone would have told you before you got started in your entrepreneurial journey?
I'm not sure that they would have told me, or if I wish they would have reminded me that you keep your friends close and you keep your enemies closer.
Tell me more.
And I say that because there are always people who will wish ill of you.
Yeah.
And I am naturally a very trustworthy person.
Yeah.
And that has really bit me in the rear end a few times.
Yeah. Friends, family?
Friends, mostly people that I thought were friends.
Wow.
Who, you know, we would do great work product, things would work, and then they would become an enemy. And things like that where you have to just take things one at a time and make sure you are doing your own homework.
Yeah. How did that make you feel? Will you tell me more about this? I'm like, did they rip off your products? What happened?
Yes.
No.
So let me just say, I've really prided myself on not doing referral fees in my business.
Yeah.
And that's a really big thing in all businesses. And I would encourage anyone that listens to this that says, well, I want to do referrals because that's how I can make money. Yes, I totally acknowledge that. Just be transparent about it.
Yeah.
Just make sure you say, hey, we're partnering with this company and there's a referral situation here. That's okay. I realize that's how the world works. But I also acknowledge that when you take referral fees, you are more likely to recommend those brands. So one of the things that I set out to do at the very beginning was to not do that. So any brands that I recommend, whether my company uses it or we don't use it for whatever reason, I don't get a referral for it.
Okay.
And I'm just going to promote your product because I genuinely believe in your product. And I think that there are, especially in the legal space and legal tech, there are so many products to choose from.
Yeah.
And it is not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And so what works for one law firm doesn't fit for another.
Yeah.
And so I don't take referral fees. And because I got sideways with somebody else in the space who assumed that I would be all in to do referral fees.
Oh.
And because I wasn't, they were very quick to badmouth me in the industry and basically say that, what I do is junk and they won't work with me or anyone else that works with me.
Oh my God.
Because I won't do referral fees.
Listen, I know better than anybody your business is your baby.
Yes.
And that's your reputation on the line. How did that make you feel?
It was hard. I mean, it was when the individual basically lashed out at me, I'll never forget the day. It was in late 2021. I actually called a PR agent that I knew. And I said, do I need to do crisis communication here to protect my reputation that she's out here saying that I'm the problem? And the PR person said, you're probably just a little too dramatic right now, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Okay.
The individual has still continued to make it very clear that she won't work with me and she's badmouthed me in the space. I tend to just stay out of it.
Yep.
I think there is enough work to go around.
Yep.
And in the end, I believe in karma.
Yeah.
And I think that that'll happen eventually.
Man, that's got to be tough. I like that advice. I think that that's only something you can learn through experience. So thank you for sharing that with us, because that's got to be a little bit heartbreaking. It's somebody that you trusted and now they turned on you. And even worse, it's like they're still doing it. And there's really at some point as a business owner, there's not much you can do. I have heard of that too. Like, oh, you're getting canceled. You call this, basically a PR crisis, just like you're saying, and you can kind of sort it out. But at some point it's like, there is sometimes nothing you can really do.
Right. So I've just continued to forge ahead, do what I'm doing. The industry is both big and small. So I know that she's still out there doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
But I'm doing the best I can and trying to just continue to rise above it and move on.
Yep. Okay. Good job. Good for you. I want to talk about, you are a mother and how important is it for your kids to see you as a business owner and entrepreneur? Is that something that you wanted to be able to show them, or it just kind of happened naturally?
Both. So I wanted them to see, so I grew up with a working mom. My mom and dad both, they're still together for 45 years at this point.
Amazing.
My mom was a paralegal. So I grew up seeing that. Yeah. And I wanted my kids to see, I'm not sure I necessarily wanted them to see the business owner side of it, but more the work and the dedication and that this is life.
Yeah.
You get up, you go to work every day. The unintended side effect to that has been, because I work from home, they have a misconception, I think, that is going to probably catch up to them when they grow up, that this is how you work. And they've definitely seen the business grow from me working 12 hours a day, hunched over my computer in the early stages, where I was still grinding, to now it's a little less of that. Yeah. But it also, what they do see, and I think this is more important, is when I need to be somewhere for them, I can do it. Yeah, time freedom. I can get to that after school. My son right now happens to go to school 40 minutes from my house. Wow. And it's painful, but I have the ability to take him and bring him home. It's huge. And I can work from a library out there. Yeah. I can do these things that I wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And so that's really what I want them to remember. Is not how much I worked, or that I created a business, or that because of it, we've been able to do things as a family because the success has been there. Yeah. It's that I was there.
Yeah. At the end of the day, everybody always says, right, a kid can be happy in a low-income household and a high-income household. It does not matter. It's your time with them. That is the only thing that they remember at the end of the day. Right. No one ever says, I'm so glad mommy or daddy worked so hard, right? They're like, I'm so glad they spent time with me. They went on that vacation with me. They picked me up after school. They went to my game. That's what they remember. So kudos to you. And it's major. Time freedom's everything.
Yes, it is. I feel like that's one thing that everybody says that they want it, but to actually get it is a different feeling.
Yeah. And to be in your entrepreneurial journey where you're there, right? We get a lot of listeners who are just in the beginning and that's the goal, but they're not there yet. They're in that hunched over phase. But to know It's there. You're so close. Keep pushing. And what does that look like for you? Like, are you okay sharing any financials? Like, was there a point where you're like, okay, I got to where I need to be. Now I can start to delegate a little bit more out to other people?
So I quickly realized, I think I really started delegating back in 2021, pretty early on, because I got to the point where I could do the legal work. I could do the paralegal work for all of our clients. What I couldn't do was manage the operations. So that was actually my first hire, was an operations person who could control the software and the client interaction and all those sorts of pieces.
Yeah.
I didn't start bringing on, I think it was probably at the end of year one when I actually found another paralegal that I trusted that could produce the same level of work product that I could do.
Okay.
She was a very dear friend of mine, and when I started the business, in the back of my mind, I knew that I had always wanted to work with her, but I didn't know how I was going to be able to approach her to convince her to come work with me. So she eventually did come work with me. She's since moved on, but it's been just an evolution of getting to that point. Getting to the financials and getting to where I'm at, in my mind, I've kind of made it there, right? My goal is ultimately to sell the business, as most people would probably want to do. I think I look at my business and say, well, it's probably a pretty niche buyer, but I'm not out here to do 7 figures. I'm solidly in the middle of 6, and that works for me. Because it keeps everything in my life afloat. It gives me the time freedom that I want. And I often tell myself, if I want to go hunch back over and grind, I absolutely can do that. So it's really on me. So it's the balance of, am I comfortable what we're doing? Do I want to go back into grind mode? And I don't right now. I think there are seasons to life and there are seasons to business ownership. And right now, 2022 was a very rough year for me with the divorce. And I didn't put much energy into the business. Thankfully, I had been able to get through the grind and get it to a point of bare minimum. I mean, we're talking, I kept heads above water and paid bills. But that was about all I could muster up, energy-wise, mentally, physically, anything else. And so now to come out of that, 2023 was great. 2024, we're just getting started. And so this is the year where I'm really reinvesting. I'm not back into the grind, but I'm into the marketing, which I haven't done in a long time. I'm into the PR, the other pieces of the business that will just help it overall.
Love it. That's awesome and huge. And I think that everybody's goals in business are different, and being built to sell is huge. So I'm glad you're thinking ahead about that, because there are strategic moves to make to get yourself kind of worked out of the job. So it is a sellable business. It's not, you can't sell something that you are the business, right? That's not going to work, right? Now you're being golden handcuffed to somebody else. You need to make it really that hands-off lifestyle. So it sounds like you're on that great path. So
yes, I was given advice pretty early on that as long as you have a service-based business where you are the service, it is exponentially more difficult.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, talking legal, I want to ask you, have you ever been sued? I know so many business owners are terrified of getting sued, but it's pretty commonplace in business.
So I've not been sued, but I've sued.
Oh, tell me.
Yep. So I had a client. She was an attorney based on the East Coast, and she owed me about $8,000. And she never paid. And so we had a very clear-cut contract. And I stressed, I called, I did all the things, because even though I work in legal, I'm not the first person to hire an attorney. And eventually I just said, I need this money. Like, I'm the only one that's suffering here. So I hired an attorney and we sued her. We got a default judgment. But when you get a default judgment, which people don't realize, it's easy to say, I have a judgment, but it's only as good as the piece of paper that it's written on. So until you go enforce that judgment, you're a little bit limited by what you can do. This is actually a pretty funny story. I was playing around late at night, super late up working, and I happened to go on the USPTO website. So what a lot of people don't realize is you can find so many things online. If you just start using your right search terms and poking and prodding. So on the USPTO website, they publish a list of all of it's called the Office of Enforcement and Discipline, OED. And if any lawyer that has come in sideways with the USPTO, if they've been suspended, if they've been disbarred in their home state, they can't practice before the PTO, if they have had sanctions against them, it's all public. But you have to know how to find it. They do not make it easy to find. It's there, they just bury it. And so I was up late one night and I happened to see this attorney's name. No. She had just filed for reinstatement with the USPTO because her suspension in her home state, she had been suspended by the bar.
Not for your situation.
Not for my situation. She had actually, and it's all public, by the way, so I don't want anyone to hear this and think no, this is all publicly available. She had essentially absconded with client funds, meaning she had won a case on behalf of one of her clients and had taken the money herself and taken it herself.
Yeah.
So she had been suspended by her state bar. And I didn't know this when I started working with her. I've learned this is another lesson in business, right? Make sure you check who your clients are. Make sure they're in good standing and you know who you're working with. So I found out that she had applied to get reinstated. And I immediately emailed the OED, the attorney that's in charge of it. And I said, please don't reinstate her. Here's a copy of the judgment I have against her. She was practicing in front of the PTO.
Yeah.
I didn't know this. I didn't know she was suspended. These are all the case matters I know that she was on.
Yeah.
I never heard back from the OED, but I got a phone call about a week later from her accounting team saying, we would love to just make that payment for you. Can we do that today?
And the title of this episode is Karma is a Bitch.
Exactly.
Good. I am so proud of you. Good job.
Yep.
And good on you for keep going and pushing through, because that is so frustrating when you do get that. Oh, we won, but it's like, but did you? I still didn't even get what I actually came here for.
Yes.
So
and here's another lesson I'll share. Do not cover your client's fees with your own credit card. So again, I'm trustworthy, and I trust people way too much. And we would have clients where when you file a trademark application, there's a $250 or $350 fee associated with it. And so I was using my business Amex and then just billing back out to our attorneys all these filing fees. 90% of the time, it was a non-issue.
Yeah.
But you have that 10% where they wouldn't pay, they paid late, whatever reason. And then I would be the one that was out the cash because I have to pay the Amex.
Yep.
So I learned the hard way that we do not cover client credit cards. There are maybe 5 clients where we do cover their fees, but they're perfect payers, no issue. And truthfully, I'm sure if I called them and said, hey, we don't want to do this anymore, can we keep a credit card on file? They would do that. But generally now, all of our clients have to keep credit cards on file with us.
Yeah.
And we will just charge their credit cards.
There you go. Another learned lesson, right? You learn things
Expensive
and you're
one.
like, nope, I'm not doing that anymore. Well, okay. So tell me a little bit about, you have been now owning 2 different businesses and who knows what is to come in the future. But when you started your first business, you were quite young. And did you view at that point youth as a con or a pro in your business? Was it helpful to you to have that youthful vigor?
I think it was very helpful because part of the business that I started was directly related to internet searching and being online and being able to dig in.
Yep.
And the youth, people are really good at finding stuff online.
Yeah.
And so I think that taking your strengths and turning that into a business is the best thing you can do. And in my case, because my strength was spending hours doing internet research, having grown up with a computer in my lap, it paid off in spades.
I love it. You know, I feel like you're the type who, if it's like, hey, I met this guy, here's the back of his head, you could find him.
100%. It is a joke amongst my girlfriends.
You're the investigator.
I am the investigator friend all day long.
Okay.
So one of my girlfriends she went through divorce about the same time I did, and she's out dating. And every time she meets a new guy, it's the same. Okay, what do we know? And then I'm like all in. Okay, here's what we know. Here's where he's at. Here's how many kids he has. Here's what he's not telling you. It makes her a little nuts, but she also has really grown to appreciate it.
Heck yeah.
And then I was working out with a personal trainer for a while, and he's very much in this like early dating. He's such a sweet, good guy, but he's still in his immediate post-divorce phase.
Yeah.
And so every time he has a new girl, I'm like, no, here's what we need to know. Here's how this isn't going to work. Here's our Instagram. Let me help you out here.
I love it. Investigator Lindsey.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all your insight and inspiration. And I think that your story is really cool for, people, women who are thinking like, hey, what do I do? How do I get out of this? For anyone who's looking for that restart. And I think you've given so many great tips on just how to really continue to reinvent reinvent the business to work for you and your life.
Yes. Remember the seasons.
Yes. Seasons. We've been talking about that in therapy, so bringing it back up. Seasons. Apparently God wants me to work on that and focus on the seasons.
Yes.
If people want to reach out to you on social, where do they find you?
So Instagram is delegate.legal.
Perfect.
And then I have a delegate.legal Facebook page as well. LinkedIn has kind of become my big thing. So Lindsey Corbin on LinkedIn.
Cool.
And I look forward to connecting.
Awesome. We'll find you there.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Young Boss with Isabel Garino. Be sure to like, share, and follow on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And let us know, have you ever wanted to sue someone in business? I can't wait to support more kick-ass women in business. We'll talk to you guys soon.